Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, your trusted partner in Minnesota's burgeoning legal cannabis industry. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand, attorney Jen Riza and her team will help you understand the latest developments, scope out risks, and find a compliant path forward in this rapidly changing field. Visit northstarlaw.com and let North Star Law Group guide you through the legal landscape with confidence. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by John and our special co-host, Jerry of Big Dreams Organics. Welcome.
Hello, how are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing well. Nice to have you here today.
I got to be honest, I'm super duper stoked to be doing this podcast. I listen to everyone, and I still feel like I probably don't belong here, but we're going to get to it.
Absolutely do. And we're excited to have you here. I remember the first episode that Steve joined as like our sort of temporary host, and now he's around all the time. And we love having friends for our podcast. And
he's there even when you don't see him.
I know. Steve?
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, there he is. Oh, all right. Well, we got a bunch of news to jump into today. It's been a really busy week in terms of cannabis news. I feel like last week was sort of a little bit on the slower side. This week, absolutely not. We've got some native nations getting into cannabis. We've got some updates at the Capitol, and we've got to talk about our friends over at the Legal Marijuana Now party. Ooh, awkward silence. All right, and then a little bit later, we're going to be trying some generic gummies made here at Dabbler Depot, exclusive to the Dabbler Depot, in fact.
My favorite.
Oh, yeah. Then we're going to jump into an interview with Mike and Scott over at Boveda. Really excited to hear a little bit more and to share the interview that we had with them about their business that they work at, about the sales of Boveda, and about a company that's been local here to Minnesota for a long time, even if, you know, they've been a pretty big mover in the cannabis industry nationally. So
I hope you asked the origin of the name Boveda.
Boveda? Oh, you'll have to listen to that segment to find out.
Oh, I will.
Actually, Boveda was not the original name itself.
Ooh, teaser.
Trivia question.
Yeah. So definitely listen to the end for that. And then at the end of the episode, I'm excited to jump in a little bit more about Big Dream Organics, talk about your business, and hear a little bit more about your experience in the industry. And
Awesome.
Yeah, excited to jump in. But first, guys, I just want to give a quick shout out, to the Dabbler Depot for hosting us. Always excited to be back here at the studio. Super excited to have you guys here, but also to some of our amazing attendees of our events this week. It was a busy week. I sent a text to Steve that we had 3 events within a 100-hour period because we had an event on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, getting education out all the way from growing big plants to talking about the Capitol to sharing a little bit more about what to expect when you're expecting or maybe not expecting an inspection.
I thought it was so funny that on Tuesday, and the event was on Thursday, so 2 days before the event, Jamie from House of Oil Works had an inspection done.
Oh, yeah.
And I was reflecting on that last night and thinking, there's no way that the Department of Health wouldn't inspect a brand that they were about to have an event with. And I thought, well, good for them, but how funny for us.
Oh, yeah. Just a coincidental timing.
At least we know they're working.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
They're definitely working. I mean, shout out to Margaret Wyatrowski. She gave a great presentation last night. I think everyone in the crowd was pretty impressed with the information she delivered as well as the conversation that we were able to provide.
Yeah, it was great to have people out being able to ask questions. But if you missed that event, actually, I'm really excited that one is posted on our YouTube page. So you can go check that entire presentation, hear a little bit more about what was shared, and shout out to North Star Law Group for helping us to have that live stream and then to be able to share it out afterwards. All right, should we jump into some news?
Let's get to it.
All right, so I think one of the biggest stories that we had this week, outside of the Capitol at least, was a new native nation, or not a new native nation, but a nation is newly looking at getting into cannabis here in Minnesota. We have the Prairie Island Indian community that's looking to open up a dispensary, and one that would be pretty big, looking at being only about 45 minutes away from the Capitol itself.
Yeah, it'll be our first dispensary within an hour of the metro.
Mm-hmm. No longer driving 4 hours north to be able to legally buy smokable cannabis products. Now you'd be able to, within 2 hours, be there and back, at least to the Capitol.
And could you pronounce the name of the shop for me?
So Island Peži.
Okay,
Peži is, so that's Dakota for grass. It's sort of become a slang term for cannabis over the years, and we can see that now become the new name of Island Peži, the Treasure Islands Dispensary.
I love that.
Yeah. Jerry, have you been to a legal dispensary in another state?
Yeah, I've been to several. Nevada primarily, but a couple other states, Michigan. My wife, they kind of take a road trip occasionally, her and some ladies, and go to Illinois.
Love that. Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm personally just so excited to be able to have dispensaries open in Minnesota that aren't just selling the great edible products that we have today, but that are really focusing on like smokable THC flower.
Yes. Like I'm really excited to see just like the size of the space and what they do with it, because I've yet to go up to the one in Red Lake.
Yeah.
So I feel like this will be a lot more accessible.
I heard the one they were already broken ground for the addition to I think it was the Dakota gas station right there on the corner as you turn in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be pretty front and center, pretty accessible for people. I think the idea of putting it like back in an industrial zone that's like really out of the way, like they do in Illinois or Colorado, really isn't happening here at our native nations. It's really, how can we make this more accessible?
Yep.
And I think some of the folks I've talked to from the nations, kind of expressed that I don't think there's any secret that there is some illicit drug problems, and some of their residents are homeless and using illicit drugs and narcotics and opioids and stuff. And I hope that some of those folks will maybe consider using cannabis as maybe an off ramp for some of the more damaging narcotics.
Yeah, could not agree more.
And it's just really nice to see more and more of our tribal nations take advantage of this head start they have before we get full adult use. Like it says, this is our fourth one now to enter the industry, and I'm really looking to the rest of them to get into it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool being in a state where there's so much acceptance, not just of cannabis in the capital, but cannabis acceptance throughout the multiple tribal nations within our state as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it really helps with like putting cannabis in our rural areas, which will be a persistent problem going into the future. But
100%.
Having the tribes to bridge that gap and start early, I'm digging it.
Yeah. And now when people ask me, like, all right, I don't want to drive 4 hours. When are we going to have a close dispensary?
Even though still, shout out Red Lake.
Yeah, shout out Red Lake. Honestly, the incredible native care, like top
So
tier.
who are the four? So Red Lake, White
So we've
Earth?
got Red Lake, White Earth, Mille Lacs. They're the three
Mille
that so
Lacs.
far. They are building that grow facility. Haven't yet started it, but have made very clear that the cannabis industry is a future for them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading last week that I think the Mille Lacs band of Ojibwe, the CEO of the company that's managing the cannabis, he said that they review something like 1,000 potential business ideas every year. And so that to me is just so interesting that they have, that's their mindset, is they'll look at anything to see if they can bring it into their ecosystem. And obviously cannabis, a 50,000 square foot growing facility, I mean, that's taking a risk, but I don't know. What I'm really looking forward to is better understanding the Native American people, because we just don't interact with them on a regular basis. They're not a part of the people I see every day. So it's like through cannabis, we'll be able to better understand these people that are amongst us, that have been here longer than us. And I think it's going to be a really nice way to enter the cannabis industry, is to have some sympathy as well as mutual understanding of, hey, this plant is for everyone, and let's get to know each other through it.
Oh yeah, it's just expanding like that bubble of what is the cannabis community. I think for a long time, the cannabis community in my mind was like me and my friends. And then it sort of became like, all right, me and the cannabis activists. And then it became like, all right, well, me and the hemp processors, and all right, me and the hemp growers, and all right, me and the illicit growers, and like, all right, the home growers. And I think now this is just further expanding that to say, and the native nations explicitly, you also are part of the cannabis industry.
They get to teach us a lot, honestly, because the way they get to go about their adult use, like we can find, I think, a lot of lessons in their success.
Yeah, 100%.
I think the other thing that we'll be able to identify is some of the fail points as well.
Yeah.
So anytime you do something kind of on the bleeding edge, we can pretty easily recognize the fail points early on. Another nation that's done a ton with cannabis is the Lower Sioux, primarily hemp. And so they've got a super cool pilot program. And you guys, I think you might even have talked about this once, where they're doing hemp greenhouses for people on their reservation. One of the coolest programs I've ever been able to see up close and in person.
Yeah, truly, I think this is one of those multi-use plants that the multi-use part of it is often forgotten, but really seeing how it's been adopted by everyone, but Native Nations included, has just been really cool over the past year. All right, should we move on and talk about our friends over at the Legal Marijuana Now party?
Yes, we should.
All right,
what's going on with them?
So you might remember a couple weeks back, maybe a month or two back, we talked about some news that the DFL had petitioned to have the major party status of the Legal Marijuana Now party essentially overturned, recognizing that some of those minimum requirements to be a major party that they did not meet. Now, we should say the Legal Marijuana Now party has said, no, we do meet those minimum qualifications. But what we saw come out today is that the Minnesota Court of Appeals is saying, actually, we believe no. So we had a judge here issue a recommendation towards the Supreme Court. They ultimately get to make the final decision on this and whether they're going to grant the petition. But it's looking like it's moving in the direction that very soon the Legal Marijuana Now party will no longer be a major party here in Minnesota.
Wow. I think I should read DFL Chair Ken Martin's quote.
Absolutely, please do.
I think he put it pretty. He's pleased that the court's pleased with the finding of the court's recommendations, is after years of gamesmanship and chicanery, the district court's findings make it clear that the Legal Marijuana Now party is not a major political party and should not be afforded the benefits that come with that status. So pretty clear indictment there from the DFL himself.
Oh, yeah.
Is this collusion?
So my interpretation on this from the last couple of election cycles is I think maybe early on Legal Marijuana Now had kind of the right, they were doing things for the right reasons. And but I think there were some bad actors that co-opted a large chunk of that. And, they put up some candidates that were, less than stellar. And, I think at this point, it's probably the right move to just say, okay, we've got legal marijuana now. Let's move along.
Yeah.
I think, exactly what you said. Like, because the DFL delivered the cannabis bill, I don't think anyone will have a massive problem with this, but also it was down to the party itself to make sure they had all their ducks in a row. So it's really self-inflicted error, but it took the DFL's pushing to get them off. But it's not like
and that's sort of that's like the strangest thing is that if they had all of those conventions, if they sort of checked the minimum boxes, this wouldn't necessarily even be a problem. It's just that they submitted documentation once saying we didn't have it, and this again saying we didn't have it, and the third time said we had all of these conventions all in the same day, all within the same hour, in an insane amount of places in counties and congressional districts and
up and down the state.
Yeah, all at the same time. And I think this is the court looking at that and saying, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. But all in all for the cannabis industry, I don't think this is a big deal.
No. I agree with you, the point that you said, Jerry, that going back to some of the people that started this party originally, really dedicated activists that have been working for this for decades. I mean, shout out to Oliver's, shout out to so many people. Like the list of people would be
the people who
so
inspired
long.
us, to stay in this, honestly.
And the other thing is the DFL has a valid concern that as long as the Legal Marijuana Party now is in existence and is considered a major party, they have a drawdown of votes from the DFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the reality.
Ballot power, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they found election after election that having the phrase legal marijuana now on the ballot, people see that and they say, yeah, I do want that. And I'm excited for a future where we're voting more on the party line. I mean, I can't say that, but
if a one issue party gets their issue, there we go.
Yep. Yeah,
I agree.
Yep. So
I wonder are they going to be on the ballot this year though?
So the recommendation is that the court should review this in time to make sure that they're not on that November ballot. It's a really short timeline. Yeah. So curious to see more about that.
Maybe we can still vote for, what's her name, for president.
Oh, should we even say her name? I feel bad.
Crystal.
Yeah. Oh, Crystal. Yeah. So, shout out to Crystal, friend of the podcast.
Crystal.
Yeah.
Saw her on the primary ballot.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost voted for her. Almost. All right. Well, so I think the biggest story that's coming out this week is out of St. Paul. There's a lot of news that happened very quickly on that side of cannabis. If you listen to our Monday episode, you probably heard us say there's not been a lot of hearings scheduled. There's one scheduled for the OCM bill, and that's sort of it. Well, that's changed.
Yeah, if you listen to our last podcast too, I called it. this week, first hearing.
You allegedly.
Well, on Wednesday at Earl Giles, Kayla was saying that next week is Weed Week at the Capitol.
Monday, though.
Yeah.
Massive day. What is that, the 25th?
Yeah, that is the 25th. Yeah, in the Commerce Committee at 1 p.m.
They're hearing many weed bills.
But let's talk about the hearing that. Yeah. So we had some pretty big hearings today. So it was supposed to be just sort of more of an informational hearing from the OCM, hearing a little bit about the main bill that they're pushing forward through Stevenson and Port. But we also heard from a lot of people within the industry. We heard some questions from lawmakers that I think sort of point us in the direction of where this might be going. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that.
I'll clarify. It was informational in the House and the first hearing in the Senate.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
One small amendment made in the Senate.
Oh, yeah.
Very small.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that amendment as well. And we'll talk about the amendments that were withdrawn as well. But first, let's talk about Charlene Briner's presentation. So she presented in both the House and the Senate. I'm wanting to compare them side by side and see how many words were like the exact same in order, because obviously pretty similar stuff being presented. The two bills are the same language. Her reasoning for it is the same. So I recommend people listen to one of them. But we'll also just tell you what she said, which is she described the reasons why they think that this bill should pass. She talked about the importance of a lottery system. She talked about the importance of expanding medical access and the importance of dealing with sort of the bottleneck of licensing that we have upcoming here. Obviously, a lot of testimony that had thoughts about that, including from someone sitting in this very room. So excited to jump into that. But yeah, we should really plug that if people are wanting to get involved, listen to the full conversation, but go to that hearing on Monday. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of that testimony that came out. John, do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like to be back in front of committee, testifying about cannabis bills now a session later?
Hello, I'm John Barty. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members, and thank you to Director Briner. She was great.
Oh, it was great. It was nice following Charlene. I got to go first in the House, which was nice because everything that she says is excellent. Like I really do enjoy the work that OCM's been doing. I agree with most of their proposals as well, but being in the room, it was definitely, the vibe was back of like, oh, weed. It was what I think 70% of the people in the room was. And that's like, we haven't had that yet. So it was nice to have all the jitters back. And then finally, I don't know, hearing, I was more interested in hearing the questions the legislators had and seeing how Charlene would answer those. And I think that's where a lot. So once again, go watch the hearing. I think they're very clear about what they want to do, and testifiers were very clear about their thoughts on and opinions. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll link to those in the show notes. But yeah, Jerry, a little bit about your thoughts. So John was there in the room. You were not in the room, but you obviously are very impacted by some of the legislation being looked at. What are some of your thoughts?
So I wasn't able to make it up to the Capitol. I was there last week for a different function. But so you had said that Charlene Briner thinks that the lottery system is the way to go.
Correct, yeah.
I would disagree with that. I think that the lottery system absolutely stacks the deck in favor of multi-state operators who can basically do straw man lottery entries.
The term they were using was flood the zone.
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially what it is. So And we've seen this in other recreational states in several instances where they choose, lottery is an easy out for the state. But there's nothing is clear then. So we don't know, are all of the names in there? Is the system foolproof, or have we stacked the deck? If I take this beautiful Northern Lights.
Oh yeah, beautiful, absolutely.
And I put 5 names in there, and they're all Tanner. Guess whose name I'm going to pull, right? So the lottery system, to me, I think really, so for small business persons and especially for equity candidates, I think that basically cuts them off at the neck. And, people can argue that, but I don't see that there's any other way that deck doesn't get stacked in favor of people that are essentially have deeper pockets.
Totally fair. And that's why we're excited to have both of you guys here today, is because we get to sort of not mirror the hearing that was had earlier, but to sort of share some of the comments that I think represent our industry. Is it's not a single, here's the exact measure that we could pass, but really sort of looking at what's the best way to roll out. So
especially with our laws that are, what do you call them? Quirky?
Yeah, our quirky, unique Minnesota
Minnesota
program.
laws here. Part of my testimony was really clarifying that a lot of work went into the merit-based system that we have, a lot of feedback, just like a lot of stakeholder engagement overall went into these, and we want that high bar. Like, we want a system that is like rigid for ourselves, and we think from all the feedback I'm getting is like putting it into what will essentially be a random lottery. Like, one thing I was hearing today is like, what happens when we have all of these out-of-state people making straw man applicants, and there wasn't a straight answer to that, and I don't think we'll find one anytime soon, and I think that's where a lot of the fear draws from. But I should say, Charlene Briner, Director Briner, made it very clear that to get in the lottery, you do have to pass the formula that they set out in the merit-based system. So we'll be making sure you check all those boxes, and then you're in the lottery, which that is a protection, but I think we need to add more protections.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, because you could get a lawyer to
that's St. Paul speak right there, and we all know it. And I'm fine with Charlene Briner. I think she's trying to do an extraordinarily difficult job right now, but we all know that if I put out so much as one Facebook post or an Instagram post or a Snapchat or anything, I can have 100 people that meet those qualifications. And for a very small sum of money, people will put their name on a piece of paper, period.
You can get a law firm to make the application.
Right.
That's going to hit and that's like the fear. Like, these guys can have a boilerplate application, give it to 1,000 people, and they have 1,000 tickets in the game. So I just want to see more from OCM, honestly, and what protections are we putting in to avoid these outcomes that we've seen in other states? And that's really what I'm looking for.
Stop trying to take the easy way out.
What would you guys say to someone who says that the license caps are sort of that protection, that because you can only hold so many licenses, that there's sort of this requirement that, people can apply for 40, 50 licenses if they want, but at the end of the day, they're only walking away with 3.
Well, they're taking space in that lottery then. They're taking space from people who may qualify who just couldn't get it together for that. It's just, with the lottery, there's only so much room. And we need to make sure a majority of that room goes to the people who are trying to get it to.
Fair, totally fair.
And from my perspective, there's very little, if any, clarity on exactly how that lottery system would play out. And I mean, I've seen it in other rec states, and we know exactly what happens and has happened historically, and I don't think there's any way that you can justify it other than taking the easy route.
What I've seen is everyone's willing to be convinced. We just haven't heard enough. And we haven't heard enough for why this is actually the best thing for the state, because we have a unique system here. We have a weird system. We have many current operators who have been selling THC long before the bill went through. How do we get those people in to build that successful industry from the jump? is the question, and the answers, I think, come from the industry.
Totally. Well, just to push back one more time, because we've heard a lot of comments online, and I think it's helpful to sort of have this dialogue and really explain some of the arguments that people have against the measures and perhaps for, and sort of talking about the
I'll also
divide
say 90% of those proposals are amazing. They make the process easier. They better the bill from what we had last year. It's like this aspect of it, of like flipping our licensing system, adding to our licensing system in this way feels unnecessary. And if it is necessary, the burden is on them to convince the industry.
But isn't this perhaps the protection against regulators putting their hand on the weights? Perhaps we could have a regulator that's put in place that says, I really like big business and I want to give the licenses through a merit process to the businesses that I feel are most ready, which is insert multi-state operator names here. We don't want to get sued. But, what sort of would your pushback be to someone who says the lottery is actually the best way to preserve social equity because we're protecting it from the hands of, bad regulators?
I would talk about long-term sustainability for these businesses. Is like, are we putting these people in a space to succeed in 5 years, or are we setting them up in a system where it's like, okay, if you get your lottery, if you get it now, by the time you start in 2 years, like competition's already eating you up because everyone, like the bigger operators are here. Like we can't avoid the bigger operators. Like that's business. Cannabis is a business. Like out-of-state operators are going to come here and they're going to do well. But it's what can we do from the jump, from the very beginning to protect people, and people don't feel protected by a lottery. Yeah, it's.
So maybe you've forgotten this whole process a little bit, but those same people that claim that they're doing things in our best interest, even from the party that got this bill passed, were the same ones that just a few years ago were telling us all, the cannabis user community and the growing community, the clandestine folks that have been around a little while, that we should all be in prison. They didn't just miraculously change their mind on that. They see the dollar signs.
I think that's such a great comment. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a very short break here. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the testimony that we heard, and then also jump into how people can get involved on that hearing on Monday. We'll be right back. And we're back. So in this second part of the segment, we're going to dig into a little bit of that testimony and then also talk about what people can do to get involved, looking at next week and onward at the session. So it was sort of a who's who of the cannabis industry at the Capitol today. And also you'll notice sort of a who's who of former Northern Lights guests. So we had John Barty, not former Northern Lights guest, but John Barty was first up there. Angela Dawson, someone who's been on the podcast, Aaron Wallach, Jeff Brinkman, really some awesome people that are making moves in the industry. Calanda, Reverian, really some cool people.
Hollis Winston for Hollies. Am I pronouncing?
Oh yeah. Not a former guest of ours, but yeah, really some.
Mayor of Brooklyn Park really involved in the cannabis policy right now, which I really like to see. Like one of our city leaders and not someone from League of Minnesota Cities, like actually physically down there. He's really stood out to me, and we connected a little bit after.
He made very clear he was not there as a mayor, just as a guy. But
himself, Mr. Winston.
But there was a special amount of attention on African-American and BIPOC people today.
I was going to say, I also spoke with Nathan Young from the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. Younger guy, understands, like being a black man in a legal state. It's like you cannot forget everything that we've gone through in the past. So just, seeing a lot of people of color down there, getting that perspective heard, Angela bringing our farmer and woman of color perspective. I think the legislators really got to see how expansive our industry is right now. It was the first time, people actually got to come down. So
it's really grown.
It's grown,
Yeah, there was some really cool testimony, hearing from people who are concerned about sort of that timeline. Jeff Taylor from Beeswax was talking through, like, logistically, if I was to plant a seed today, or if I were to get a license today, how long would it be before I had a product?
To say that timeline, setting it up is very important to keep hammering to OCM. Like, man, like with these rules, realistically, when are we opening dispensaries? Like, let's be open and honest about all this. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah, a lot of comments on that lottery system. A lot of sort of mentioning how that's not something that's going to allow small business to get in, allow the large business to create all these straw applicants. Really, I think that was definitely the thing that stood out most to me, is people making comments about that lottery and about how that would harm their business or the people that we really want to be part of this industry.
And an interesting one was Maren Schroeder and the CEO of Vireo.
Yeah, so she testified in the Senate. So that was Amber Shrimpa.
Amber Shrimpa, yeah. So it was like one person from the medical business side and one person from the patient protection side saying very similar things. I think I found that really good, to be honest, because it's like, okay, our patients and their providers want the same thing, much like how our business owners and our, let's say, enthusiasts all want the same thing here. So we really can put it together if we keep talking.
Yeah, I thought Maren's argument was interesting. We don't want our two medical operators to become our industry. We don't want that to take over like the entire cultivar and people growing here in Minnesota. But we are wanting people to continue to have access to their medicine, especially as we transition over to whatever our future industry looks like.
And we've made our medical system so much more accessible. So it's like,
Have we though?
Honestly,
More than it was in
a
its
lot
inception.
more than it was. Like they took away the fee and they added. I think now it's just like you got to talk to your doctor and you can
Right,
get on the
and
medical.
Almost. So there is
It's still qualifications. But, I mean, what are we at, 8 locations right now?
we're at 16 throughout the state, 1 per congressional district per business.
Okay. So 16.
Still is not a lot, not enough.
No, I mean, like it takes 1,600 to come close. And I would argue that Maren's, saying the same thing from the, the medical consumer side. I guarantee you that those two companies, those large MSOs, don't echo her sentiment that we don't need medical to get bigger, right? I mean, that's they have an obvious goal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Is not a nonprofit organization. They're around to make money, and that is sort of the point of business generally, and we can see that especially true here in the cannabis industry.
And we know they won't be nearly enough for that whole first year. Like that whole first year, we're gonna have to get other cultivators going.
Yeah,
Sooner than later, I would argue.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have so say January 1 is the kickoff date. So is that the kickoff date for growers too? Because then we're going to have Illinois.
So, and that's what they've been talking about is, so let's say hypothetically, we get this early licensure, applications are rolling out as written in the bill today. We still wouldn't see people starting to grow until early parts of next year. Adding that timeline on, we're not going to have shops opening with like actual product until middle part of the year, maybe that second half of the year. Yeah. And that's, not really accounting for like the stream of commerce that has to be set up and all of this to really be created. It's I'm interested to see how they think it's going to be opening in March.
Quickly running out of time to hit that March 25.
Oh yeah,
Best
not a deadline.
Best recreational legalization in the country.
In the nation, folks. Figuring it out one day at a time.
Yeah, I remember us making bets on like, all right, so January of 2025, before or after, and now it's like, all right, well, March of 2025, before or after, and now it's like, all right, well,
June 25.
yeah.
So there was a
2025?
legislator who, I'm not going to call out on the podcast, but he literally did this to me. He said, if immaculate conception happens on day 1,
it's God's doing. I love immaculate conception and cannabis because they're all they
it
all
just happened.
They're like okay.
I don't know where 300 pounds came from.
Who could have thought?
Who's to say?
Yeah, so we did have some commentary coming from the representatives themselves, which was interesting to sort of get some of those early comments from other people on the committee. Representative Brian Lee said that really she had a concern that the lottery doesn't allow the state to ensure that businesses are actually ready to operate. Basically, you can roll out a license, But if you look at she mentioned one business particularly. She wouldn't say them by name, but she's like, I've looked at a number of applications, and one was a lot better than the other ones. And I think that person should get a license. In the lottery system, who knows who would get a license? So interesting comment from there. And then also Representative Coito Wilthurst, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, said that maybe we could have sort of like a hybrid where if you qualify as a social equity applicant, maybe you get like a couple extra additions similar to like trying to get into a Spanish immersion school. What are your thoughts?
Katsia with Thune.
Katsia with Thune?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Took me a while too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The hybrid merit lottery is in my, if I may editorialize.
Please, that's why we're here.
Is I think where we're going to end up something closer to a merit-based system that if we have too many equal applications will be put into a lottery. I think just bringing everyone's attention to there are not enough protections, like as written, not enough protections to go through with the lottery system is like I think was the best thing about today is like we had multiple voices coming from multiple different backgrounds, uncoordinated, saying, hey, we don't like this. So I think that hybrid system or just full merit system is where we'll end up. And I applaud Representative Katsia Watun for being, for thinking out loud in the hearing, being like, okay, this is clearly something people want change. What can we do? Because we're going to have to get creative. Like that should be the fun part.
What's the big fear with issuing probably more licenses than the market will hold?
I think the biggest fear, at least that's been told to us, is that they don't want something that happens similar out west, where you have a ton of product that suddenly there's so much product that the price falls down to the point that it's not really a profitable business anymore. And all of these businesses that were created are sort of gulfed up by the big multi-state operators that can bear through that loss. Whereas a small business, maybe if your price per pound drops significantly, that's it for you.
And I know there's some fear too, when that happens with small businesses, that they'll start selling back to the illicit market, and then we'll be fueling the illicit market through the regulated market.
So over-regulation, that happens already. So again, without mentioning any names, if I grow 500 pounds and it fails testing, where do you think that goes?
Amen.
Like, I'm willing to talk about some stuff that people don't want to talk about.
That is persistent around the country.
100%. Yeah. Everybody has a black market guy they go to when they fail because they're not going to take a zero.
And that's why we need, at first, people who are ready to succeed, people who are ready to cultivate, ready to get this thing going. And that's the only way, really.
And I think a lot of those people already exist.
Bingo.
And, I don't necessarily think that you should give them a head start, but I think they have to be one of the top qualifying candidates. I mean, if you've been in the game, even coming from the black market side and then moved already to the legal market with the hemp derived and the low dose, I think that has to count for something. Yeah. And that's self-serving, admittedly. I mean,
but wouldn't it be crazy if we rewarded our good actors?
Weird.
Wouldn't it be crazy?
Crazy. Well, so we do know that a number of legislators listen to this podcast, or they go on YouTube and watch it. So if you guys could say just like a comment or two that you really want to be dug into the heads of lawmakers that are looking at these measures, what sort of would you want the big takeaway to be at how they can reform our bill, this bill, or the current program to make it more sustainable and equitable for businesses?
I think more stakeholder engagement is always the answer for that. Like, the more experiences you can hear, the better you can kind of see these outcomes as you craft the policy.
What about you?
Is there, which one of these right here?
Oh, yeah, right there. Yeah.
For all of our legislators, stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Keep it simple. Everything we do in Minnesota, for as long as I've followed Minnesota politics, which is longer than I'd really care to admit, we take a model that's nice and round. We're like, oh, that's a good wheel. And then by the time we get sausage ground in St. Paul, we take that wheel and we go, well, if we just took this edge off and this edge off and this edge off and this edge off, we would have a better wheel because we're going to do it better than everybody else on the planet. And that mentality has screwed up so many things in Minnesota. And they overcomplicate it, and then they go out and they push a square wheel out, and then eventually, think the licensing system that Minute decided that they were going to build better than. Okay.
Minlars.
Yeah, it still doesn't work right. It works better. So eventually, after you drag it around a few thousand rotations, it starts to get round again. But there's no reason to overcomplicate it that way. Just stop. We have all of the evidence we need. We have all of the models that we need. We went and we looked at what they thought were the top 2, 3, 4, whatever. And we were going to build this perfectly round wheel with no bobbles, no check marks, no nothing out of it. And then here we are again today, next Monday, we're going to start taking those nice round edges off and making it square again. And there is no need for it, and I would echo John's, listen, we've lived it, whether it's black market, whether it's gray market, whether it's the low dose hemp based, we've all lived it. We've done it. We grow cannabis, we consume cannabis, we sell cannabis. Sure. We're in it forever. We're not going away, and we shouldn't be penalized, and they should listen to us because we do know what consumers are looking for. We do know who in the game is legitimate and who's not, and we don't need multi-million dollar MSOs coming to save the cannabis industry from us. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'll say, let's watch Maryland right now. It's a good place to watch. They just did their lottery system, I think a few days ago or early this week. Yeah, that's just a good example of what we might be facing here.
So, predictions from Maryland then? You willing to offer your opinion?
I'm just going to say they had 1,700 people apply for 180 licenses.
Right. And so now we'll be able to see who gets those licenses, right? And there's going to be some equity candidates that get the nod, right?
Yeah, their first round I think was mostly
social. So there's going to be some equity candidates that get the nod. There's going to be some existing small businesses or people that have been in business, at like retail businesses for a while that may get the nod. But I will go out on a limb and make a prediction that you're going to see a huge number of those licenses go, maybe as straw men in the beginning, but they will end up just like our Minnesota medical program. They will end up large MSOs, out-of-state ownership.
Fair. Well, I'm excited to be able to watch sort of how that industry evolves, but also how the hearings here in Minnesota goes. So let's talk about how people can continue to get involved. So, John, as you mentioned, that Senate hearing today wasn't just an informational hearing. That was actually moving that bill along forward. So that's been now re-referred to agriculture. So we don't have the exact date of that, but we should have that in the next couple of days here. Excited to see sort of where that continues to go, especially as they address those agricultural side of the bills.
I think they have 6 more after agriculture, and then back to commerce.
Oh, the committee go-round begins again.
Right.
And then in the House, it was just an informational committee here in the Commerce Committee. So they will be back there on Monday with a whole slew of bills looking at some that we've talked about here on the podcast. So House File 3766, or the Caregivers Expansion Bill. House File 3760, or that Med Patient Protection Bill. House File 4195, the Medical to Tribal Pilot Program. House File 4789, the Expanded Patient Definition. House File 4251, the OCM is prohibited from approving products bill. And then House File 4029, which is that impaired edible sales are illegal. If you want to hear more information about that, you can check them out on the House website, or you can go and listen to previous episodes where we've talked about all of them. So those will be coming up in the hearing on Monday, and then everything will be coming back on Wednesday when the Cannabis Omnibus Bill will be going back to Commerce. So Stevenson talked about this as he was wrapping up the hearing today. They're going to be having more of an informational session on Monday. Wednesday is when they're going to put it all together in a package that they hope to be able to pass out of committee and move forward to the next step in the committee go-round.
So get your voice heard by Monday, Wednesday at the latest.
Mm-hmm. So, John, you testified today at the House and also in the Senate. If you are recommending to someone they're wanting to make their voice heard, they're wanting to go to the Capitol, how do they actually go about getting involved?
There's a lot of ways to do it. Mm-hmm. I think the easiest way is just email your legislator.
Yeah.
They have to. Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
No, I think they're totally spot on. So like starting at like the easiest point, written testimony.
Yeah.
Super easy. You can email it to your legislator. You can email it to the committee legislative aid.
Yep.
Lots of people that you can get that information to. That's like a basic way, but let's be honest. How many of those legislators read all of those letters?
Not too many.
Yeah, not
too
many of them.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've done some rights work with a different part of my life, and the numbers are what matter. You know, like some people get really super duper caught up in writing this super great, heartfelt, you know, like their life's experience in whatever their topic is, and you know, unfortunately.
To a file.
Yeah, it hits a file, but the size of that file is what matters. So if you feel passionately about something, absolutely send an email and leave voicemails for your House rep or your senator or others that may be key committee chairs and stuff like that.
City manager.
Yep, city managers, county commissioners, city council, all of those elected folks, send those emails, make those phone calls, leave those voicemails. Just understand that it doesn't necessarily take, an entire 38-page essay to get your point across.
Yeah, I think you're correct. It's way more effective to type something up for you and all your friends and neighbors, and you all send it, than it is to like get into the weeds of how you feel. It's just like keep it short, keep it sweet, and multiply. And if that doesn't work for you, excuse my language.
No.
Almost dropped the first one.
Freaking show up.
There we go.
And that's the other deal.
Up.
So if you show up to the House or Senate chamber or a committee hearing room or something like that, like we've all been in them where there's like us and three other people, right? And we're like, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere, because we're the only three people that really feel seriously about that, whatever that issue may be. But we've also been into them where it is like, nut to butt as far as you can see. There's people standing in the doorways. The doorways are wide open. There's people in the hallways. Those are the ones that, one, tend to hit the local news circuits and the newspapers, but they also are the ones that legislators tend to pay, in my experience, pay a lot of attention to.
Most attention, yes. Yep. Like they have the most eyes at those. They usually, they feel that same energy. So when you hear of a big hearing, like guys, like it does a lot for like guys like me who are there to have people show up, even if you're not testifying, to give your support, to talk to the legislators before and after. Like I always tell people, like they are people in the end, people who have minds and feelings that can change. And like most people, they take most seriously the people who are in their face. Like they take that face to face most seriously.
And so, if you really want to get legislative stuff done, if you don't have at least your House representative and your senator's cell phone number on your phone, you're not as serious about it as you'd like to claim.
Because, like I said, they are people. They got cell phone. It's honestly, that is a great point, Jerry. Like,
and it's a voting block. So, I mean, on most issues, every person that shows up, every person that writes a letter, the math is you count as 4 people. And so if 100,000 people send essentially the same snippet of I feel strongly about House file or Senate file, whatever, and then there's 100,000 of them, they're looking at 400,000 people. That's huge numbers. And what do we got? 3.7 million?
Yeah.
That's a large chunk.
We used to always say back in the campaign days, imagine if every single cannabis consumer in Minnesota just called their lawmaker once to say, hey, we want legal cannabis. Yeah. Now we need those people. We need people in the industry making those same calls to say, hey, we really want to be able to protect what our cannabis industry looks like and make sure that it looks how we want it to here in Minnesota.
And if you own a cannabis business, talk to your customers.
Yeah.
Help them understand what's happening. Like everybody kind of assumes now that, well, I'm just going to be able to buy recreational marijuana here come January-ish, right? Like that's the assumption is that the state is the bottleneck, which they are. But, the assumption is we're just good to go. And that is not the case. There are so many moving pieces, and there will be for several more sessions that can really positively or negatively impact our legal marijuana laws.
Yeah.
Something Senator Porter always says is we ended alcohol prohibition however so many years ago, yet we have an alcohol bill every year, so we should expect the same for cannabis.
Absolutely.
Like it's going to be it will be every year, that we will just make that contact, tell them what you believe, and if you really care, keep doing it.
All of these elected folks are there to do a job for their constituents. And, so I apologize to some of my friends that are elected officials, but I view them as employees, essentially. They are, they just happen to work in St. Paul. And so, like when I have expectations about things, at the very least, I expect them when I call, you're going to come, we're going to go have coffee or whatever the case may be, and you're going to at very least listen. And you do have to work with people that may not be in a party that super supports whatever idea you're talking about. And it's sometimes the best thing you can get out of a legislator is just for them to go get coffee when a vote happens.
We've had an advocate / lobbyist who has been talking with all of the Republican members who are going to be hearing their bill. Not for their votes, but just to make sure they understand what's happening so that they don't come up with distracting questions.
Right.
So just to make the process smoother. And I was telling her, I was like, that is, if you can't get meetings with the one guys, get meetings with the others. Always helps.
And I really want Lindsay Port's green jacket. It's become iconic now. I might wear that. So we're going to start selling that. No, just kidding. All right.
Well, you have to move to Albert Lea and join our Chamber of Commerce. If you're a Chamber ambassador, you get yourself a shiny green jacket.
All right. Well, I've never thought I would be a Chamber of Commerce kind of guy, but I think this green jacket might be the reason why. All right. Well, let's take a short break. When we get back, we're going to try some generic gummies from our friends here at Dabbler Depot. After that, we're going to be hearing our interview with Mike and Scott from Bovida, and then we're going to come on back again and hear from our crew here again about Big Dream Organics and talking about your background in the industry. So excited and stick around.
You said Blue Dream.
Blue Dream. I know it's the Freudian slip of the cannabis industry. It's terrible. All right, we'll be right back.
I've got a gift for you down the road.
Yeah.
Once it's cured.
All right, we should talk. All right, we'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome to another episode of Northern Lights. Today we're going to be sampling some generic gummies. And I don't just mean generic gummies, but I mean the generic gummies. Joining me today is Marcus and Will. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, super excited to have you guys here. We'll be talking through the generic gummies today. We're going to be trying 3 different types. So we've got the indica, we've got the sativa, we've got the hybrid, we've got a bunch of different flavors, and I'm excited to bust into them. Marcus, I'm terrible for doing this, but which one do you want to start with?
The generic ones.
Generic. All right, here we go. Well, these ones are in my hand, so let's start with the couchy ones. How about that?
All right,
cool. So these ones, they're the blueberry cheesecake flavor. So the terpenes in them are that blueberry indica.
It's funny because I have some blueberry cheesecake flour at home.
What?
Oh,
All right, well,
I
you
love
have to tell me if it tastes similar.
Yeah.
So, Will, while I bust these open, tell us a little bit about this Dabbler Depot exclusive product.
Yeah. So these were a product that we just we got white labeled for us, and we just tried to do for lack of a better word, a generic gummy. That if you're just getting started in the edible world of especially the hemp derived gummies, and you aren't really sure where to start. These are a really great place to start, especially if you're not sure even how each different terpenes are going to affect you. Of like you don't even know the term sativa or indica. It's a really good thing to just kind of start with this classic 5 milligram terped gummy that's going to have a little bit of that cannabis flavor in there, but still have a lot of a really nice like sweet flavor of the gummy too. So it kind of it's kind of the best of both worlds. I'd say it isn't too much too terpy, and it isn't just like gonna taste like a fruit snack. It's kind of a nice balance.
I love it. Awesome. Well, here, I'll pass these down. So that blueberry strain, I mean, that's a classic in the cannabis industry, definitely one that people know. So excited to see that in here. And you got that delicious blue flavor on it. There, you can see it in the color. I love that. Cheers.
I love that.
I love the texture on that gummy. It's like one of those melt in your mouth sort of gummies.
Tasty. Yeah, the color is so fun too.
And I like what you said, where it sort of has a little bit on like the borderline of candy, where it has that sweetness to it, but it's not overwhelming. I mean, you get that blueberry flavor. You can taste those terps in it. That's really good.
Yeah, and I like that it's more of that like condensed sugar as opposed to that kind of like gelatiny kind of one too. So it's just the texture is nice.
For sure. Marcus, I know you're normally not a huge gummy guy, but what are your thoughts on these?
It's a good texture. You know, it's not overly chewy. It's kind of like buttery soft.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, I liked it. Oh, good blueberry flavor on that. So these are the couchy ones. So we're not here to tell you like the specific effect that you're going to feel. This isn't medical advice per se, but definitely got that indica terpenes in there. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and I honestly think it's a great thing to even see how different terpenes might affect you personally as well. Because like I've even talked to some people that indica terpenes kind of make them a little like hyper, or some people like different terpenes will just affect their brain completely different. So I think it's kind of fun to start with these and see like where your experience goes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's fun being here in Minnesota, where really people's first exposures to different terpene profiles isn't necessarily in like, hey, I bought some Agent Orange, flower, and I smoked it and it was great, but it's getting those profiles instead through the edible format.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's move on to our next one here. So we got a little couchy. Let's go for like that in between, and now more of the regular gummies, if you will, the regular of the generic gummies. I love it. That's great.
Yes.
That's great. All right. Well, so
That's my go-to, the regular generic.
yeah, this is so good. I remember when Kale was first telling me about like, oh yeah, we've got some generic gummies here. And I'm like, oh cool, what are they called? He's like, oh, they're just generic gummies. I'm like, yeah, no, cool, but like, what are they called? He's like, no, and like got the package, and I was like,
Oh yeah, that's like a who's on second kind of bit.
very much so. Oh my gosh. All right, well here we'll bust these open. So these ones have that banana bread hybrid terpenes, and that's banana cream pie flavored.
These are my favorite gummies.
Ooh, all right.
I just think that I love banana flavor, and I just don't think enough people kind of play with that flavor, and so I just think it works really well.
Oh, you're setting the bar high going into this.
And I love cream
I'm just a
pies.
banana dude.
We specifically told
get that.
Marcus not to say that on the episode. Banana cream pie. Yes.
I mean, you guys, your minds are in the gutter. I was talking about dessert.
There we go. Well, let's go ahead and enjoy these ones. Wow.
I don't know what it is. Banana for me. Like I've always been a banana Laffy Taffy guy.
Oh,
like
that's exactly
I
where
love
mine
like
went.
banana milk. Like I don't know what it is. Like it's just like. It's
Well,
always been
you
a thing.
certainly get like that Laffy Taffy flavor almost to it. Like that's really, really good. Marcus, again, not a huge gummy guy. I get it.
Yeah, what do you think?
What are your thoughts?
I don't know. No comment.
All right, I'll take it.
All right. Well, Will, you said these
If you
were
like banana cream pie, you'll love this.
There we go. And that's what I think a great thing. It's authentic to the flavor. You're not going to try it and go like, it tastes like something, but it's not banana cream pie. Like it's definitely banana cream pie.
In a gummy form.
Oh yeah, you kind of get that like Nilla wafer kind of flavor in there too. Yeah, it's fun. Like that's the thing that I like is that like all three of these are kind of a pastry forward. Because I think like a lot of people will just do like a single flavor and be like, these are strawberry or these are pineapple flavored. So it was fun to just kind of experiment with the different flavors that who we worked with like had available for different profiles, and so using the different terpenes to kind of play with those kind of pastry-y kind of flavors.
Very cool. Well, sort of rounding out the pastries. So we had the blueberry cheesecake that we tried. We had the banana cream pie that we tried, and now I'm really excited about this. I was looking at the flavors before, and I saw we got the lemon bar one, and I was like, all right, that's that's I think is going to be my favorite.
Yeah, that's probably, I would say, like our best seller of the three, just because I have a lot of people that even come in and they just like more of that sativa feeling. And so I think just like citrus flavor is very popular with a lot of just like the edibles that I've been seeing kind of moving around. And so the fact that it's just like lemon, but it also has a little bit of like vanilla kind of graham cracker kind of flavor in there too. But
For sure. So we've got that Lemoncello strain in there.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago about a year ago listening to a podcast that was live. Maybe coming to Northern Lights. No, different podcast. And, stopped by a dispensary there, got some oil, and Lemoncello was the cultivar I went with. So it's cool to see that made its way up to here to Minnesota with that same profile now in gummy form. Salud. And just like with those other ones, that's so like lemon bar forward flavoring. Like that's so true to the flavor.
Yeah, I think I like that one best, and then the blueberry. And then, even though I like cream pie so much, that's my least favorite.
Yeah, so the generic packaging. So, I mean, it is as like, you guys don't lie with the name. Like, that is, I love it. It tells you it's the 5 milligram THC. It tells you it's generic gummies. You can look at it, and it is as advertised. That's awesome.
We tried to go as classic as possible, especially with even the label in the front. Of just like, this is the terpene, this is the flavor, this is how many this is how many milligrams like per piece. And so like just trying to be as obvious as possible, because it's just hard, even like stylistically, like form over function, I think is the biggest thing, is that like sometimes people will try to just do way too much branding and it get the actual substance of the product gets lost. So I think just like being as upfront as possible and just being like, this is what's in it.
Fair.
Was kind of our approach.
Well, what I love about these is, I mean, sort of like you said, if someone comes into the store and they're like, I'm wanting to try a gummy, but I don't really know what to try. Is it a hybrid? Is it like, really, what am I looking for here? You can sort of say, hey, try one of each of these products, walk out the door with these 3 things. You'll be able to go home and have a much better picture on what really are you looking for in a cannabis product and how do you want to maybe use it in your life?
I mean, to answer the question about the packaging, I think this is the first product I've seen with an emoji on it. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's.
I send out like 8,000 emojis a day.
This is how I feel. Our personal guarantee. This is how you will look after trying these gummies. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Regular and lifted.
Yeah, literally. We should do like a before and after.
I know. For real. Send in your picture of yourself giving the generic face. That's what we're looking for.
I love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for coming on, giving
gosh.
us a sample of these
Thanks for
gummies.
having me.
And these are a Dabbler Depot exclusive, right? So if people want to do a try of these, they got to come here for these.
Yeah.
They feel fast acting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and we're usually running some sort of deal or sale or promo with those, and so yeah, if you come on in, we're usually having that as a nice little add-on.
Awesome. Well, make sure to comment below which is your favorite, whether you like the lifted, the couchy, or whether you're just feeling regular. Go ahead and comment below. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, it's getting cutthroat now.
Hey guys, what are you up to?
Oh, we're just practicing for the Canna Connect 4 tournament. Getting ready.
The Canna Connect 4 tournament? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the expo. All the brands are going to get together. They're going to compete in Connect 4. We want to show that we're the best in the industry, so we're practicing. And Marcus is getting really good.
Like Northern Lights, like you guys think Canna Connect 4 is like a Connect 4 tournament? Guys, Canna Connect 4 is a conference and expo. It's not a Connect 4 tournament. We're bringing together like 20 to 25 brands to give out like samples and education and knowledge about the Minnesota cannabis industry. It has nothing to do with Connect 4.
But we just haven't heard anything about it.
That's my fault, and I apologize. But we're getting the word out about Canna Connect 4 starting today, and tickets are on sale. In fact, I'm giving away 150 free tickets. Like, you guys got to get your tickets quick.
Oh,
Yeah.
guess we should stop practicing and go get our tickets.
Let's get the hell out of here and grab our tickets.
All right, let's go.
April 5th through the 7th, Modest Brewing and the Wilderness. Get your tickets online, cannaconnectmn.com.
And we're back. Super excited to be sitting in the studio today with the team behind Boveda, or at least 2 of the people behind Boveda. Scott and Mike, welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in. We're super excited to have you in the studio today. I mean, everyone at this point knows who Boveda is, but I think people are still surprised to learn that they're a Minnesota-based brand. it's one of those that you've probably seen with instruments or, with cigars, or let's be honest, on this podcast, probably cannabis products. But tell us a little bit about each of yourselves and what brings you to Boveda.
Yeah, my name is Scott. I've been with Boveda for almost 9 years now. Started just kind of working in customer service. And at that point, we were just kind of getting into cannabis and really being open and pursuing that market. And so quickly we got really busy. And so I transitioned into kind of a sales role, and have been doing that for the last 7.5 years, working with large brands all across North America. And that's what I'm doing still today. So having a lot of fun, just meeting growers, meeting big brands, and helping them protect their cannabis.
Very cool.
And he's really good at it. He's humble, though. My name is Mike Kanowitz, and I think I'm going on 6 years with Boveda. And, life is funny, right? Things happen for a reason. And I was working in the automotive industry here in Minnesota and for about 16 years, and just the work-life balance wasn't there, and I knew I needed to make a move. And fortunately for me, one of our teammates, Kate Holste, shout out Kate, I grew up playing hockey with her brother, and I'd heard so much about Boveda that they were growing. And honestly, I looked at it as kind of like a soft landing, like a temporary move, until I found what I really wanted to do. And very, very quickly, I realized what Boveda had going on as far as the strength of the team, how well the product worked. And, 6+ years later, I'm still around. So, and hopefully they'll keep me around for another 6 years.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Right.
Very, very cool. So bring us forward a little bit. Cannabis is one of those things that I think at Boveda, in terms of my mind, I think of it as like the primary pillar of Boveda. But I think when you look at the brand itself, it's actually just sort of one of those components of the entire brand. What has it been like sort of being inside of a company that is partially cannabis, but also partially a lot of other things as well?
Yeah, no, it's been kind of unique. Really, when Boveda started 26 years ago, it was solving a problem in the tobacco premium cigar market. Most people know you store your cigars in a wooden humidor. And back in the day, in order to keep those cigars properly humidified, you would fill a shot glass, you would wet a sponge, use a glycerin gel-based solution that really only gives off moisture. So you see these large spikes where it just shoots up, and then as that product dries out, or the solution there dries out, it drops down. And so you just have this kind of roller coaster effect, and that can be really damaging to cigars or any product that's moisture sensitive. And so that's really where our technology came into play, was, hey, we can solve a problem here and keep a consistent humidity level across extended period of time in those humidors. And then fast forward really 10-12 years, cannabis kind of found us. We had a few people out in California that were moving a lot of weight, and they had reached out and said, hey, we've actually found your product, helps maintain the weight of our cannabis. So as we're growing and producing it here in California and ship it over to New York, it's a long supply chain. New York is known to be really dry in the winter months, and so they're like, hey, this product helps us maintain that weight so we don't lose money over time. And so a few years went on that we were doing that. We weren't against it, but we didn't really jump in with 2 feet, because it's new. Cannabis was kind of coming into the spotlight. There was a lot of stigma around it being in a state in Minnesota where, it's not legalized. We kind of kept our distance for a little bit, but then we realized, hey, we can really help cannabis producers put out a higher quality product, save them money, just kind of maximize their efforts and maximize the enjoyment of a consumer. And so we spent about 3 years researching cannabis, and that's where we landed on the 62%. That was the first RH level that we launched into cannabis. And once we did that, it was just full steam ahead. We're a part of this industry. We want to better the industry. And we're still doing the same thing today. So
very cool. Yeah, I remember some of those early packs that were like, it's good for your herbal product. And it wasn't specifically for cannabis, but it was, 62%. And hey, that happens to be pretty good for cannabis as well. And it's been cool to see that transition in the market sort of move forward. Do each of you, not to put you on the spot, but we're in a legal state now. Do each of you sort of have a background with cannabis prior to doing that with Boveda, or was Boveda sort of your introduction to cannabis as well?
No, like a lot of your listeners, I'm guessing I started with cannabis in high school, essentially. With the hockey team or the soccer team, and that's where I first discovered it. And through college and everything, I'm a consumer, and to be a part of the industry is really special. And I'm just thankful that Minnesota finally allowed us to get into the cannabis space as far as individually homegrown, and then obviously next year with the recreational coming through. But I still think there's a ways to go. I think there's still a lot of green closets out there that people in Minnesota are hiding in, and I have the same feeling. I go to a legal market like California or Colorado, and you spark a joint up on the street. It's still kind of like you're looking around to make sure, like, is this okay? But hopefully with time, we can all get past that.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I also dabbled in high school. Never got super into it. I, unfortunately, after college, struggled with an opiate addiction. And so after I got through that and then started working at Boveda, I was a little bit hesitant to kind of get back into that with my addictive personality. And really going to events and trade shows, we meet a lot of cool people that have a lot of cool stories. And there was a lot of people finding, relief from their addiction through using cannabis. And that really kind of got me excited. And now I'm a full on, I love cannabis. It helps me sleep at night. My mind races a lot. I'm just kind of a high-strung person, so it mellows me out and allows me to just kind of chill and take a step back. And so, I think Mike can attest to this, and I'm sure you guys can too, just the amount of stories that we get to hear about how cannabis has helped people with mental illness and other things too. It's super powerful. So
definitely can agree with that one.
Absolutely.
It's nice to see the people behind Boveda. A lot of our listeners know the brand by the logo. Maybe they've researched it. Maybe they know it's out of Minnetonka. A lot probably don't know it was started in 1997 or that it got started in cannabis in 2012. And it's like, Boveda is one of the oldest legal ancillary cannabis industry businesses in Minnesota. And it's great to see a face with a name and understand, and not that it's a requirement to use cannabis, but to be open-minded about it. And that probably helps you better understand your customer base and be a better employee at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think cannabis, the cannabis industry can be sensitive to outside individuals or companies coming in and jumping on the bandwagon or the coattails and trying to make a quick buck. And that's not what we're about. We've been around for a while, and cannabis came to us, and we really, after a little bit of time, dove in with 2 feet and really have just found the impact that Boveda can make is super powerful. And we're all very passionate about making a difference and just furthering the plant, getting rid of the stigma. And I think just anyone in Minnesota that has a Minnesota company that's, serving the cannabis space has a responsibility and an opportunity to kind of crush that stigma. And it's going to be, time and it's going to be hard here in Minnesota. I've managed our, the Canadian book of business for us, and they've gotten through that similar cycle where they legalized. And it has, even up to this point, there's still a stigma. It's gotten a lot better, but again, I think all of us can play a role in removing that stigma. So
very, very cool. So speaking of stigma, I think my first interaction with the Boveda product was when I was in high school. Bought some cannabis from a friend of mine, friend of the show, and it came with one of these little brown paper bag type things in it. Didn't really understand what it was. He said, "Oh, keep it with your flower; it will keep it fresh forever." And I think I went so long thinking that it was just those tiny little packs, and then all of a sudden saw like the slightly larger, like 1 ounce packs. It's like, oh, that's really cool. And just for one of the first times last year, saw like the 1 pound packs. And can you take our listeners through a little bit of what some of the products that Boveda are? I think we might think of it as just that little tiny brown slip, but there's so much more to what Boveda has.
Absolutely. And shout out to your plug. He clearly has the best flower in town if you store him with Boveda.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have a solution, everything for a flower stored at home, all the way to your larger cultivations that are growing tens of thousands pounds a year. So our smallest pack currently, that's it's mostly an OEM product right now, is our size 1. So the size 1, it's a little bit bigger than like a postage stamp, and it'll protect up to 3.5 grams of flour, so up to 1/8, and it's very popular with pre-rolls as well. And then from there, we jump to a size 4. The size 4, it's about 2 inches by 2 inches, will protect up to a 1/2 ounce. And you've noticed I've said up to twice now. So that's one of the amazing things about Boveda is it will never over humidify. So you could use our largest pack, which is the size 320, which will protect up to 5 pounds. You could use that with 1 gram of flour and never have to worry about too much moisture being released. All it is extra horsepower. That pack's not going to have to work as hard, and it's going to last you a longer period of time. I like to say it's like setting a thermostat inside your jar. It's like it wants to regulate the number on the pack. And for cannabis, as Scott mentioned, we have our 62%, which was our original, and then we have a 58%. So size 4, 1/2 ounce, size 8, up to 1 ounce, and then the 1 pound pack that you mentioned is our size 67. I know it's a lot of numbers. It's very confusing, but once you use it, you'll understand. And then again, the size 320 is currently our largest pack that we make.
Very cool.
So how many individual sizes on the cannabis side?
1, 4,
5.
8, 5. We're actually, I think I can talk about this. We're launching a size 2.
Yep.
So it's coming, it kind of fills a gap, I guess, more specifically on the OEM kind of packaging side. As Mike mentioned, we had the 1 and the 4, and there was a gap in between there. And so, we're launching at the end of this month. We'll have a size 2 for brands and packagers out there.
Very cool.
So it's not just the cannabis shops like Legacy Glassworks that you're selling into. You're also working to integrate within cannabis grower brands so that they leave the products leave the farm or the greenhouse or the cultivation facility with Boveda inside the packaging. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And the process behind that is you grow, you chop down your plant, you essentially just killed it when you did that. And it's now going to begin to decay, die, just go bad over time. And a big part of that is the moisture leaving the bud. Or in a market like Florida, too much moisture causes mold and other bad things. So really, once you've done your normal dry process, that's when you should introduce Boveda, and it goes into that bulk storage and into the back end. It's going to maintain that quality and the weight while it's sitting there until it goes into your final packaging stage. And then from there, that's when you would put in our small one. In a really easy way that we like to explain it, it's a cheap insurance policy. So you've spent all this time, money, blood, sweat, and tears growing and producing a high quality product. And then you add Boveda, and that just maintains that quality until your consumer or customer gets to consume it. And you want them to have that good experience. Cannabis is sold on weight. Water, moisture is weight. Mm-hmm. Weight is money. And so if product dries out, it loses moisture, which it's losing weight. So you're actually getting less for that, that product.
It's a great insurance policy. I like that.
Yeah, I love how Boveda has sort of grown along with the industry, where when it was much more on, I think, the consumer-focused side, that more traditional, you throw the pack in the bag kind of thing. It's cool to hear now that you could buy, a pack of pre-rolls that would come with one of those packs just in it, keeping those pre-rolls fresh until you're ready to use them.
Exactly. Yep.
So before we move on, I want you to, as much as you can, touch on Boveda's acquisition of Seavault. You've got a jar here. Can you take us through the integration that you see with this product and this product?
Yeah, I can talk about some of the kind of bare bones of it, and then I'll let Mike touch on just what Seavault is and why it's so awesome. But Seavault has been we've had a working relationship with them for quite a few years. And they actually developed the lid with a holder to hold the Boveda pack up there. And so,
Yeah, go ahead and show it.
yeah, I can pop this open here.
For our listening audience, Sea Vault is this silver tight jar that you may have seen cannabis stored in the past.
Yeah. So they created this little holder on the lid here. The Boveda pack just slides right in there, so it's out of the way, stays up there. Super airtight container, high quality. And yeah, just over the years, we've worked really closely with them. We've done trade show events together, different collabs, things like that. And they were at a point in their business where they were ready to make a move, and so it made sense. We like to call it the perfect marriage. Perfect storage container, airtight, doesn't allow light in. It's rigid, durable, and then you add the Boveda in there, which is kind of the engine inside that works its magic. It's a perfect marriage.
Yeah, we like to say that the Sea Vault's the car and the Boveda's the gas.
I love that a lot. Yeah, I remember buying one of those a few years ago and popping it open and being like, oh, that's so cool. Like, what a seamless integration to just have that spot for it all ready to go.
Yeah, and the cool thing, too, just like the Boveda product, there's consumer applications. So this is a smaller one. There's even smaller ones in this. We didn't bring it because it's actually massive. But there's a big one. What's it, 50 liters?
Yep, correct.
Cool. How much pounds?
5 to 6 pounds.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
It's massive. So, yeah.
And then that pairs with the 320 bag.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I don't know how far I can go into this because I know it's a recently new acquisition, but I'm familiar with Sea Vault. I'm less familiar with E-Vault, and we have a class coming up in May that's about concentrates. Can you talk about a little bit of Sea Vault's sister, E-Vault?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the newest product from Sea Vault. So essentially the E-Vault, it's a ultimate storage, transportation. People are actually selling the extract in the E-Vault as well, but it's basically a perfect environment to safely store that extraction. And what's interesting is, well, again, back to the insurance policy. People are using the E-Vaults because for forever they've been shipping those around or delivering them in glass. And all it takes is for one fumble and you got $5,000 of extract that just broke and is all over the floor. So by utilizing the E-Vault, it's protected, it's preserved, it's going to stay nice and fresh in there as well. Obviously, no Boveda pack comes with the E-Vault because it's not necessary on the extraction side, but it's just it's a great, safe environment for storage.
And that works for like rosin, bubble hash, works for all the
Correct.
different types.
Yep.
It uses a higher grade of stainless steel that works better with that product. So
Very cool. So I think there's a lot of people that have recently become growers over the last couple of months that it's been legalized. Let's say someone's a new home grower at home. They're getting to the end of their grow. They're thinking, all right, I'm ready to harvest. Can you walk through some of the products that Boveda has that can really help someone on that home grow side get to the end, and then a little guidance on maybe how they would go about using them?
Yeah. Obviously, the Sea Vaults, like we just touched on, it's a great storage environment. As Scotty mentioned, no sunlight's going to get in there and degrade your cannabis flower. But we also have, I'd say for most home growers, our size 8 and our size 67 would probably be the most likely sizes that they'd be using. If they're pulling down 3 or 4 ounces, I'd say that size 67 would be perfect. 'Cause it's going to last them for months. And obviously, we're all still learning. The home growers are still learning, but you go through your normal drying process. You get that bud close to where you think it's ideal, or maybe just past the point of where you think it's ideal, and then introduce Boveda to it. And Boveda is going to fine tune, add or remove moisture as necessary to make sure that bud stays fresh and that it's ready to go when it's time to share with your buddies or to roll one up.
For sure.
I love that. So it would be more sort of like that curing process where you'd be focusing on that.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Cool.
yeah, it's really straightforward. You kind of just got to use it but it's as simple as just throwing it in there. The Boveda pack, when it's spent and done because it becomes hard like a cracker almost. They're really supple and kind of jelly almost when they're full of life, and when they're not, they're thin and hard like a little cracker.
Very cool.
Throw it out, throw a new one in.
Sweet. Yeah, you don't really have to send instructions along with that product. Right. Yeah.
And in case people were wondering, it's all natural food grade ingredients inside the Boveda, and the paper and the ink that's used on the outside as well, all FDA approved and stuff. So it's natural and safe to use.
Yeah. So I found out about the brown sugar trick late last year. What is like the most surprising way that you used a Boveda pack to improve whatever it might be? You must have some stories.
Yeah, when I was working in customer service, I'd get a lot of calls. Hey, does Boveda work for X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, yeah, if it's in a airtight container, then yeah, it's going to add or remove moisture. So really, any moisture sensitive product, Boveda can be used for. One of them was alligator eggs.
All right.
Yep. So that one was pretty wild. You've had some too.
Yeah, mosquito larvae. There was a couple labs that were doing testing on mosquitoes, and they needed to keep the larvae at a certain relative humidity percentage, so they use a Boveda pack to help with that. What's really starting to come on too are like trading cards, whether it's like Magic the Gathering or like old baseball cards and stuff. If as they get dried out, they'll start to curl up a little bit or get wrinkly. So people are using Boveda packs to make sure that their very valuable cards stay valuable, I guess you could say, in a good condition.
Yeah, those Charizards are got to be kept at the right humidity.
Right?
Rolls-Royce, they were putting, I don't know if they're still doing it, but one of their cars had a wooden humidor inside of it.
Back seat, yep.
Yep. And so the Boveda was a part of that project. We've done some work with NASA, some aerospace companies that manufacture plane wings or the kind of storage of plane wings after they've been produced and shipped, and electronic parts, a lot of food products. The brown sugar one is super popular. We were just talking to Kale out there about that. But yeah, if you have brown sugar at home, you've experienced when it becomes hard like a brick. Well, if you throw one of our 69% Bovedas in there, even the 62 will work. I think we recommend the 69, but yeah, that'll keep it soft and you can spoon it out easily for months.
Yeah, the 62 it breaks it up so you can work it, but like I only have the cannabis like RH levels. I need to actually get some of the non-cannabis stuff.
We'll hook you up.
Yeah,
We'll hook you up.
we'll take care of you.
Because I heard something about coffee too. I wanted to ask you guys, how does that work with, or what's the best percentage to work with the coffee beans?
Ooh.
I think that's 69 as well.
Yeah, I think that might be 69 as well.
Nice.
Herbs and spices, loose leaf tea. If you have loose leaf tea at home, loose leaf tobacco. Yeah, there's a lot of, and if you're ever wondering, you can go on our website. We have a lot of that stuff listed, or you can call in and we'll help you.
I love sort of the full circle aspect of, I remember the teenager going to the grocery store and being like, hey, do you guys happen to sell grinders here? And I'm being like, no, of course not. And now here I am going to the dispensary being like, do you guys sell brown sugar humidifiers here? And they do. That's a great feeling. Yeah.
It's so funny, right?
It's a unique crossover ancillary issue, like going back to the stigma. Like my first introduction to Boveda was through Rochelle Gordon.
She's awesome.
Rochelle.
Yeah, shout out to Rochelle.
Friend of the show.
And she's like, yeah, I work for this company. It's in Minnetonka. They've been in the cannabis industry. I'm like, what? Like, where? Like, next to, North Star Financial or whatever, like right off the highway and near Tanner's. Never mind.
Yeah. We could tell that story. I was driving on my lunch break the other day, coming back from Chipotle, driving through the loop-de-loops and all those many back circles. And
It's a nightmare.
it is. And was driving, and I was like, all right, well, there's a bank and there's Boveda. I was like, I know them. I didn't know they were literally like less than a mile from where I spend most of my time during the day. So it's tucked back there a little bit.
We'll
but
swing by.
yeah. Oh, we'll have to come
Yeah,
hang out
you
over
guys
lunch.
can, come on over for sure. We'll hook you up with product, hang out, and
Sweet.
have a good time.
All right. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are doing a lot for us these next couple of months. We've got the podcast. We've got the March 18th class where there's going to be gift bags from Boveda, similar to the treats you brought today. April 6th, we're putting on a conference and expo. Boveda is going to be sponsoring a panel.
Yep.
They're going to have a table, handing out, lots of free samples and all that good stuff. Then we come back April 15th with Raiden Labs and Brian Rice, a follow-up to the drying and curing class. We definitely want to get you guys back out and make sure your team shows up because you guys are doing a lot for the industry, and we appreciate what you're doing for us. And we're going to cap it all off on May 5th with a bubble hash bonanza, which you've got to check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to be there. No,
Let's
we appreciate it too. And again, we're here to work together with people. And I think there's a lot of people that say the cannabis industry is all about working together, but there still is a lot of I don't know, room for improvement for everyone to come together and further the industry, get rid of stigma, and just really make this thing work. I think we all want to see that. We've seen a lot of states and whole countries kind of do it wrong and fall on their face. And I think Minnesota is really set up to succeed and do something really cool. Yep. So
very cool.
And we know we're not the stars of the show. Yeah. It's the cultivators out there putting their blood, sweat, and tears into the beautiful flower, and then the consumer as well. We want the consumer to have enjoyable, safe cannabis at home. And, not everybody smokes an eighth every couple of weeks. That might have an eighth and have it for 2 months. Well, now they can keep it fresh and protect it with Boveda and know that they go into roll one in 2 months, that it's not going to turn into sawdust as soon as they go to grind it up.
We've all had that.
Yes.
And then your throat's on fire for a week.
Oh, it's such a bummer. Well, so I have some more questions for you about your outlook on the future of Minnesota's cannabis industry. But first, we're going to take a very short break. All right, and we're back. So you guys have both been here in Minnesota for a while, helping to service other legal cannabis industries in other states. Legalization is now, sort of very slowly coming here to Minnesota. I was curious on your guys' thoughts. You've been here in Minnesota watching other states come online. What do you think the next few months are going to be like? And more importantly, what has it been like seeing legalization actually finally come to Minnesota?
Ooh. It's a big question. No, I'm really excited. I think our whole team is super excited. Just one from, I've been in Canada. Well, I'm living here, but traveling to Canada. It's a lot of travel. And I'm just really excited to have opportunities here at home, like what we're doing right now, to just engage with the community.
You guys go everywhere, trade show wise. You guys have been not just North America. You've been to Europe. You've probably numerous countries.
Yeah, at one point we were doing over 70 events a year as a team of our B2B team was not that big, 10 people. So a lot of events. We've toned back a little bit, but kind of with things coming around and opening back up, we're going to be out there. We're doing a lot of local events and supporting this market. But I think Minnesota's really set up for success. I'm optimistic for just how they have kind of structured the licenses. Really allowing for local Minnesota mom and pop to set up shop and succeed. I like, the limits on how much you can have, edibles, all of that. I think, in Canada, you can only buy, what is it? Like 10 milligrams at once or something. It's a really
low amount.
Low amount that, the average consumer that consumes on a weekly, regular basis, that's not even enough to provide really much of anything. So from that standpoint, I'm really excited. I think I'm biased because I've grown up in Minnesota, but I love the Minnesota culture around Minnesota businesses and just, that small kind of local community feel. And I think Minnesota is set up to succeed and allow those smaller mom and pop shops to make something really cool. So.
I think that's what I'm most excited about too, because the way it looks like the craft cultivator is going to be able to succeed in Minnesota. We've seen a lot of states that the craft cultivator, they wanted to succeed, but it was preventative due to the taxes, the license cost, or whatever. Or they tried it out and they just couldn't compete with or get shelf space at the local dispensary because the biggest brand paid for it and had it. So then they had to either stop growing or they had to go back to the legacy market. From what I'm seeing in the meetings that we've attended, it looks like the craft cultivator is going to actually be able to succeed here. So we're going to be able to go to different areas of the state and say, I want to, see what whoever is growing and what it's like up here. Now I think what I'm really interested to see, I'm hopeful that these cities, these communities come on board and allow it. Because I think at the end of the day, it's going to be up to some of these cities to say yay or nay as far as whether or not they're allowing dispensaries and then those grow licenses to take effect.
Yeah, I mean, they can't outright prohibit a store from opening, but they could make it more difficult.
Right.
We're going to get a Boveda grow in every county of Minnesota. We're going to make sure that it happens. There's going to be someone using Boveda products at their grow. I'm certain of it.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's the goal. And who knows, maybe we'll open up our own dispensary someday.
There we go. Yeah. a Bova dispensary.
I don't know. We'll see. I've been pushing for that.
You guys are going to help us with the with the Sesh Lounge. Those Adirondack chairs are going to be outside at Canada Connect 4, which we saw them originally at the Legacy Cup, and we're working with Legacy, so it makes sense to bring it all together.
Aren't those sweet?
Yeah, those are really cool. I mean, it's a great
Marijuana deck, I believe it is. If you want to go look it up out there.
Yeah, they're awesome.
sweet.
They're super awesome.
Very, very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming in today. Before we wrap up, I heard a rumor that there might be something called the Bovida Challenge going on right now. Do either of you guys want to touch a little bit on what that is and tell our listeners about how they can perhaps participate in the challenge?
Yeah, so essentially it just allows you at home to kind of experience the difference of cannabis that has been stored with Bovida and without, and have that kind of what we call that aha moment. You know, we've over the years at a lot of events have had people that just didn't buy into what we were selling and telling them. And it's like, hey, that's totally fine. Don't take our word for it. Here's some samples. Go home and try it on your own. And I promise you, pretty much every single time that person comes back and says, you were right and I was wrong. I had just really quickly, I had an instance in Canada, and a guy for some reason just did not like what our product and us, and he was pretty aggressive about, this doesn't work, you guys are lying. And again, just, hey, that's fine, you can have your opinion, just take this home and try it. He came back the next day and he's like, I put this in a jar of old dry weed, and overnight I noticed a difference. I'm a believer, I was wrong, I apologize for being aggressive. And so yeah, essentially it's just a little kit that has the tools that you need to take some of your cannabis, store it unprotected without Bovida, and then with Bovida. There's a nice little kind of sheet that walks you through what to do, and then you just let it sit for 14 days roughly, then come back to it, touch both samples, grind it up, smell it, and then ultimately consume it, and then record your results. We did this back in, was it 2020?
2019, late
Yeah.
2018,
Yeah,
2019.
and we sent over like 3,000 of these out, and we had a 97% kind of return rate on the cannabis stored with Bovida is better.
nice.
So if you're interested, reach out to us and we can definitely hook you up with that. I don't know if there's a official code or spot, but if you reach out and mention this podcast, we will hook you up.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, Bob over at CannaJoy was doing the challenge, showing people off in shop, and everyone's like, yeah, this is clearly the better product. And
Love to hear that.
I just couldn't see. I mean, I caught some flack last fall online, like, oh, those guys, it doesn't do what they say it does. It's like, I took the position of, well, one, I looked into it, but two, I was like, they've been around since 2012. Like, at some point after a decade, the jig is going to be up, right? Like, if it's really not working, how would you still be here, right?
Yeah. No, like anything, there's haters out there, and that's fine. We welcome it. I think it helps us grow, and honestly, some of that feedback has caused us to really research cannabis even more and do more testing, and through that, we've just really kind of solidified, like, this isn't a joke. Like, there is actual science and data that proves that our product works, that, we know it works, but there's data and science that proves that it's actually having a positive impact on the actual cannabis through terpene retention. So that's a big thing is when cannabis dries out, a lot of those terpenes are housed in the trichomes. Those trichomes become brittle. They break off the bud, and it's no longer a part of the cannabis. So you don't actually get to consume it when you go to smoke it. And so maintain that trichome health, maintains terpenes, so you actually have more of that present. So you get more of the entourage effect, the flavors there. All of those things are protected and preserved in the bud. And so, again, we have a ton of data and science on all this. So if you're interested in learning more and diving deeper into that, it's either available on our website or we can send it over. But
well, we did a whole class with Brian Rice.
Who's the man?
Yeah, I know. So they started the presentation. It's like, all right, well, I know a little bit about this. I've heard of a terpene before. And then very quickly it's like, oh, wow, this is a lot of science. And it's really cool seeing the amount of work that's gone into, not just making a product that keeps things at the right humidity, but doing so in a way that's thoughtfully crafted to protect the product that it's doing.
Well, and Brian probably touched on this during that home grow class was, forever everybody has judged good cannabis flower by doing what? They open up the bag and they smell it and they go, okay, that's some fire. But like Scotty just said, what you're smelling is you're smelling the past. You're smelling those terpenes that have left the flower. So you're not going to get that same flavor, that enjoyment when you go to smoke it. So what Boveda does, it sequesters those terpenes, keeps them in the flower. So when you go to grind it up, pack a bowl, roll a joint, whatever it is, that's when you're going to get that full bouquet and you're going to get that taste profile when you're consuming the product.
Yeah, and that was a common, thing we've heard, and we still hear it from time to time today is, Boveda robbed my cannabis of the smell. And it's like, no, it definitely is more muted than what you've probably been used to in whole bud form. But again, the science proves that when you store with Boveda or cannabis is properly humidified, there's more terpenes present in that bud when you go to consume it. And we took it a step further too, just to kind of understand the smell piece of it. And so we had cannabis or ran this test at a St. Croix Sensory Labs out of Wisconsin. I believe they're out of Wisconsin.
Correct.
Yeah. And so essentially they have people that are smell experts, have a heightened level of sensory. And so they took cannabis and they took it in whole bud form, smelled the sample with and without Boveda. And you can do this as part of your Boveda challenge. Recorded the smell. The cannabis in whole bud form without Boveda smelled greater than the cannabis with Boveda. Then after that 14 weeks, they ground it, or 14 days, sorry, they ground it up, and the cannabis that was stored with Boveda had a 5 times greater smell than the cannabis stored without. So again, that just kind of further proved like, okay, these terpenes are actually being, kept in the bud.
Yeah.
And so when you break it all up, you can get that big nose hit that everyone likes, but then you're maintaining more of those terpenes in the bud. So when you consume it, you get that full effect that we all want and love.
No, I think what you were saying was such a great point, where it's like people either consume those terpenes by smelling it, and that's when it's boiled off and it's no longer in that product, or when you actually go to finally consume whatever that cannabis is through vaporization or smoking or whatever method. I think that's such a great point that, yeah, you're smelling less, and that's because you're losing less off your actual product.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's can be a hard obstacle to overcome because, like Mike mentioned, people have judged the quality of cannabis by opening it and getting that big nose hit, smelling it. And we all love the smell of it. No one's arguing that. But unfortunately, when you have a massive, nose hit, you're smelling terpenes that have evaporated. It's kind of like garlic or an onion. When it's in, whole form before you've chopped it up, there's a little bit of a smell, but not totally. You chop that up and kind of expose it, and boom, that's when you get that big garlic or onion nose hit.
Yep, or like your coffee grounds that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, just earlier we had minimum wage Tim on. Tim runs a small coffee roastery in Minnesota, and it's interesting to hear the parallels between coffee and cannabis, and I love that smell because that's the first thing that I love when the grinder starts working is the smell of the commodity, the smell of the drug, really, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And it's actually very similar to tobacco too. There's a lot of parallels between cannabis and tobacco, and just how it's produced and how moisture plays a role on the quality. And with tobacco, as it dries out, you lose a lot of those essential oils and sugars that give it, that real robust flavor. And so again, keeping it properly humidified keeps those flavors in there. And then also just the quality of the construction of the cigar or whatever it is. So,
do you work on both sides, the cigar business and the cannabis business? And are those two different types of customer profiles? Like, what are some of the fun things that you notice? Like, when you have to sometimes wear, I don't know, like wearing two hats, I guess is what I was saying.
Well, both Scotty and I are just on the cannabis side, but
okay,
back when we were a much smaller team, when the phone rang, one of us was going to answer it. So we were talking to multiple industries. I guess how you could sum it up is, 7 years ago, roughly, Boveda had one social media account. So both our cigar stuff and our cannabis stuff was on one account. and eventually I don't think our premium cigar customer base liked the combination. So we have since split them into separate accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if you guys are the right people to speak on it. Like I know Allison, I know Matt, I know Shannon a little bit. I know a handful of your teammates, but like no one has suffered a worse hit in the Minnesota cannabis industry on a social media perspective than Boveda Fresh. Like you guys have gotten killed on social media before. Like just from your, 7-8 years at the company, can you speak to being like extra cautious on social media when it comes to the cannabis industry? Because I think Boveda has lived that experience.
Yeah, for whatever reason, there's certain accounts that post cannabis consumption and all things cannabis and never deal with it. I don't fully understand why certain people get, maybe singled out. It could be through people complaining and reporting photos and things like that. But we spent a lot of time really bootstrapping when we were a small team, building up that account when we launched it. We had a gentleman, Luke. He's no longer on the team, but he was a young guy out of college and had a marketing background and a passion for kind of building a brand. And so when he got hired, he spent his first month. He'd come in every day for about 2 hours in the morning, and he would just go and like cannabis related content on Instagram, post or comment on certain things. And that's really what kind of built our following up. And then we got to a certain point. I think we were over 30,000 followers and had a ton of engagement too. We didn't have a bunch of bots. We didn't buy followers. These were like really hard earned followers. And, just got shut down, and we tried to work with Instagram. I think we got it back once, and then it was like, you're done. Your account's gone and you're never getting it back. And it's like, what? Why? And you just never really get a good answer of why.
You're not inherently plant touching, yet the product touches the plant. So the photography is plant based, which typically is the issue.
Yeah.
And we're not trapping, selling flower out the back door or any of that.
I've heard some crazy stories though, and maybe we don't have to go into the details, but Boveda really works with legacy growers. Like Boveda has had to do some deals with some people that are working money on the underground, right? And it's just a different perspective than a lot of other businesses have in Minnesota.
Well, I think it's a different perspective than most people in the cannabis industry, because you can also buy Boveda products at like my music store and like all the other different touching points that Boveda has.
Yeah, I mean, that, again, when I said cannabis found us, it was legit, growers in California that were moving a lot of weight over to the East Coast, and that's how, they discovered our product. I remember way back in the day, I can't remember what year it was, but I had some friends that were like, wait, don't you work for this company? And they sent me a picture, and it was on Cops, the show Cops, and they had busted a guy, and they pull out a big bag of weed, and there's a Boveda pack in the big bag, and they like pull it out, and they're like, what is this thing? And set it on the back of the car. And so, it's fun. Again, the legacy growers built the industry and the market, and now, we have to respect them, and we work with everyone and want to work with everyone. So, yeah. Yep.
So if you want to drive cannabis across the country, Boveda, no, I'm just kidding. No, but truly, I think Boveda is one of those products that you can really find so many components of cannabis growing, processing, cultivating, using to use Boveda in, be the home grower side, be just a home consumer side, be it that whole commercial side that is coming to Minnesota. I think Boveda has a pretty big touch point to the cannabis industry.
Absolutely. I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but some people are finding success using our 69% packs with their gummies, whether that's gummy vitamins or your edibles. Just going to prevent it from drying out, kind of getting a bad texture and all that stuff. Or what we've all seen, I'm sure, is where it gets stuck into like one giant gummy and you're not exactly sure the dose anymore.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Our 69% packs can help with that as well.
Yeah, good call out, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, that's great. I mean, if Boveda can help keep the Minnesota gummy market more fresh, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you guys are the real champs.
Again, yeah, it's a dry state in the winter. You need that moisture to keep things fresh and consumable. So
Sweet. Well, truly, guys, thank you so much for coming in the studio today. Thanks so much for talking a little bit about Boveda, walking us through your products, and just a little bit about your backgrounds.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
yeah, thanks guys, and thanks for what you're doing too. This helps. Again, these are the types of things that I think help the Minnesota market really hit it out of the park. So thank you.
Yeah, and we're here whenever you need us.
So on that point, I think most of the time when we have people on, it's like, hey, give us your handles on Instagram, because they're a little bit of a smaller company trying to help grow. Where can people find Boveda on Instagram?
Is it Boveda Fresh on Instagram?
Yeah, it still should be Boveda
Yep.
Fresh.
Yep.
Some of our employees have Boveda accounts, like mine's Boveda Scott,
Boveda Kate.
Boveda Kate. Yeah, there's a lot. So
Boveda Mike got shut down. So sorry.
I've been looking for Boveda Mike because I used to see it.
You're not alone.
Oh, man. Gosh. Let Boveda live.
right, yeah, and then BovedaInc.com. Again, we love chatting with people, so reach out if you have questions. We're here to help, and yeah,
Sweet. Well, thanks for helping us to save the terps, and thanks for coming in today.
Anytime.
no problem. Thank you.
We're thrilled to announce the launch of the Friends of the Minnesota Cannabis College program, a unique opportunity for individuals and businesses alike to play a pivotal role in shaping the future of cannabis learning and industry networking in our state.
By joining as a friend, you're not just supporting our mission to foster a sustainable and inclusive cannabis community, you're gaining exclusive access to a comprehensive curriculum, expert-led workshops, and a vibrant network of professionals, educators, and advocates.
Whether you're a curious newcomer, a passionate enthusiast, or a seasoned professional, there's a level of friendship tailoring just for you. From seedling friends to best buds, each tier offers a unique benefit designed to grow your knowledge, connect you with like-minded individuals, and open doors to new learning.
And for businesses, our partnership levels provide unparalleled access to training, promotional opportunities, and exclusive events, setting the stage for your success and your team in Minnesota's flourishing cannabis market.
Join our vibrant community today as a friend of the Minnesota Cannabis College and help us to cultivate a brighter future for cannabis education and advocacy. Become a friend today at mncannabiscollege.org/friends.
We'll see you soon.
I love that, Jerry. I love that. Keep giving them heart attacks.
They need it.
Yeah.
We cornered another one. So like as soon as he's actually a senator. I'd never met him before. He's from up north. And we like as soon as and it was just me and a bunch of random people. And as soon as the elevator closed, I'm like, so now that we've got you here. He's like, wait a minute, guys, I'm a Republican. And I'm like, that ain't going to save you. You got to treat them like employees. Sometimes you have to make your employees a little fearful too, I think.
Well, that seems like a good point to go in on. And we're back. So,
Jerry Collins, everybody.
Yeah, welcome to the Join the Vibes podcast. No, I'm really excited to have you back for this last part of the episode and really dig in a little bit more to who you are and a little bit about what brings you to the cannabis industry. So sort of the question that we like to begin with for people is just what brings you to cannabis? I think a lot of people, it's, high school experiences, maybe it's college experiences, maybe it's, you had a parent who was a grower or whatever, be it, sort of what brings you to cannabis?
For me, I've used cannabis off and on, since high school days, which I think a lot of us in this space have, right? Mm-hmm. But really what kind of brought me back to and into the industry on the legal side was I was really having a lot of issues sleeping, hence the Big Dream Organics.
Oh, so we're already getting into the name. This is
I had I'd done some research. I'm like, CBD oil seems like a good thing because I've taken mountains of melatonin. I've done everything from Tylenol PM to just name the the products, right? And I was, I'm failing, and like 3 hours of sleep a night on 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I promise you, is killing you. People probably don't give good sleep enough of their attention.
Absolutely.
And so I started using some CBD oils, and they were pretty much like tea-free, broad spec type things. And I'm ordering stuff online because that was kind of where you got it back in 2017, 18, 19. And I was like, well, there's got to be, and I was having mixed results because like some of it was pretty good. Some of it was obviously, I guess in my opinion, far over the legal limit at the time. And then some of it was just complete trash. And, so I had no success with that. And I'm like, well, there's got to be a local place, in late 2018, early 2019, there's got to be a local place right here in Albert Lea that sells it. And so I made some phone calls and, looked around at some websites and stuff, and nobody was doing it. Like one place had like CBD isolate, like a hand cream or something like that, like 100 milligrams or something. And I'm like, well, that's not going to do the trick for me. And so having no luck there, I was like, well, I was at a point in my life where I had an opportunity to kind of do my own thing after spending a lot of time in kind of the corporate world. And or as I lovingly refer to it, selling my soul. So I'm like, let's do this small business. Let's try and build something. And, so we started early in 2019, started out pretty much with just broad spec products and quickly moved into full spectrum and a lot larger product lines, working with a ton of Minnesota growers and companies early on. And that's always kind of been my method, is try and keep things as close to home as possible. And, like when people, break bread with them, there's a lot higher level of trust, than just some random faceless, nameless individual via email. So I prefer to work with Minnesota folks, and, I've worked with a lot of them in southern Minnesota at one level or another. Kind of fast forward to today, we're deeply entrenched in the hemp-derived and low-dose markets, and some of the products that are coming out almost like what seems like a daily basis, or just, some of them are, there's still ones that are, you're like, maybe not. But for the most part, I think Minnesotans are like, they're killing it. Beverage markets, some of these edibles and stuff that are popping up with different, like functional additives and stuff like that. They're mushroom blends are one of my favorites, like the functional mushroom blends, along with, small doses of THC and CBD, CBG, CBC. We've got one that has CBC in it. And the beverages are kind of an interesting Minnesota phenomenon.
What's the phrase, like necessity breeds innovation? Like we have such innovative progress. There we go. Brews innovation for sure. Yeah.
So, Minnesota has a pretty storied history with microbreweries and craft breweries, and that's the perfect jump off platform to make some of the most awesome and best cannabis beverages to boot, and
finally accepted. Cannabis beverages finally accepted by stoners. And I know they're expensive, everyone says, but it'll only get better. I think the culture is going to grow for cannabis beverages as the market grows.
I think for me, the biggest thing with the cannabis beverages is how many of our customers are really, really getting engaged with them. And, I know that this will not come as a shock to our alcohol distilleries and breweries, but I think those cannabis beverages are starting to really take a market share, and people are choosing what, in my opinion, is, all things in moderation are good, but, I think that's arguably, you can call it a healthier alternative, as far as intoxicants go. And so, like, we get a lot of people, summertime last summer was like, pick up a 4-pack or an 8-pack or, a mix and match or whatever. And, it's like, well, everybody else is, tipping beers and whiskeys. We're going to, consume these cannabis beverages around the campfire, and then we'll be up at 6 a.m. making coffee while they're nursing a hangover till noon, And so that's
I know I'm not really a big drinker myself, and went to the Dabbler Depot, their Dabbler event, which was a great time. It's a super awesome time, but also was sort of my first time getting drunk in quite a long time. And that experience the day after, I'm glad that I don't have that with cannabis. It truly is sort of just a different intoxicant leading to just different sort of side effects.
One's a plant, one's a poison.
I love that.
Not supposed to consume ethyl alcohol.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Big Dream. So you talked about how it was sort of out of this need that you had, or this desire to find quality sleep.
Yeah.
What led, and tell us a little bit about what you do today.
So I'll just quick synopsis of what we've done in the last few years. So we opened up out at the Skyline Mall in Albert Lea, and we spent several years there. Super appreciative to the local owners that own that facility. Gave us a shot when some others kind of raised an eyebrow. Because people forget that just back in 2019, 2018, like the cannabis scene was way different. Most of us consumers still didn't talk about it outside of our circle, right? Yeah. And so we spent several years there, increased the number of Minnesota companies we worked with, and the products just keep getting better and better and better and more diverse. Growing. We right away, I got a Department of Ag license to be a grower and a manufacturer on the hemp side, more or less because our goal was to help educate everybody from local elected officials to local law enforcement to just the general population base. What's in this can originally started out as this plant,
For sure.
And kind of getting in that compliance zone with the Department of Ag was kind of a neat deal too. Sometimes it was kind of a pain in my butt, but other times it was kind of cool just to see how everything, kind of the inner workings from a compliance perspective, and, pretty educational over the last few years doing that.
Actually, I want to ask you about that because your hometown police department is the first one to combine with MDH and do these combined searches. How has that been being like a hometown operator with all this starting?
So we like to claim that we're Albert Lea's first and finest cannabis establishment. So we have focused a fair amount on trying to remain compliant, with our, being licensed to a Department of Ag. You're open to inspections, not just when you call them. But we actually, last Wednesday, we had our first Department of Health cannabis product inspection at our location, 1039 South Broadway.
Perfect. Thanks for throwing that in.
You bet. So I actually wasn't there when they showed up, and our fabulous employee, one of our employees, Marissa, who has been with us for like 4 years now, she's awesome, super educated, and really knows products and really cares about people. So she called me. She's like, "Hey, police are here, and another guy from the state." And I'm like, finally happened. All right, let's go. So I get down there, had a nice conversation with our, they've kind of got like, I don't know if they call them districts or regions, but there's inspector representatives from the Department of Health that cover certain areas. Had a nice conversation with him. He had some of our local law enforcement in tow. I think pretty much just as like an educational thing for them. Because, being the first one in town, I've gotten a lot of questions from our law enforcement community, because every time, all the way back from like 151, 72, it's like, so is weed legal now then? Or like I can't write tickets anymore? So there's, one of the unfortunate things about the way that Minnesota's rolled this out is that normally when Minnesota creates a law, it immediately has an apparatus in it that shoves it down to the counties, cities, and municipalities, right? And in this case, that has not been the case. Yeah. So they're all kind of clamoring, trying to figure out what they should and shouldn't do anymore, what is legal, what isn't legal, so on and so forth. So I think, for them, that was probably a pretty good collab. As a longtime cannabis consumer, I'd just soon not have law enforcement in my store, but no offense to law enforcement folks, but it's old habits die hard.
Absolutely. Well, these were the people that have been enforcing cannabis prohibition for decades.
Yep.
The idea of saying, come into my shop where I'm selling cannabis products.
Around, ask questions.
Yeah.
Feels really wrong.
I definitely can understand that.
But my hope, and one of them is actually a new guy on the Drug Enforcement Task Force for our area. So my hope is that they took that time to hopefully, become more educated and kind of get an idea of, what is legal in this market right now, what isn't, and that gives them a little more insight. So that first inspection, we had one issue with labeling. It was a tincture that said use sublingually, and apparently the state has taken issue with the words use sublingually.
Yep.
I still don't fully comprehend it. I'm not sure what I don't understand the legal standpoint behind it, but I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere that made that decision, and we'll go with that. I mean, it is what it is. It's a minor change for us. The labels on the products that we got 2 weeks ago already had the change that basically says use as needed in compliance with Chapter 63 HF 100.
Beautiful.
So it was a pretty simple fix for us. I believe there were 12 locations in the Albert Lea area.
Correct.
Not necessarily just within city limits. I think there was a couple outside of city limits, but we had one location that was not our location, but another cannabis location that was, pumping out a lot of THCA. Over 5 milligram gummies, I heard was another thing. Or maybe it was just inedible, so there was a few things that were, just, I guess, kind of wildly non-compliant. And then, I imagine there's probably a bunch of other things, little labeling things and, keeping up. That's probably the single hardest thing in the cannabis space right now is just keeping up with how fast things change.
Oh, absolutely.
And so for, other cannabis businesses, labeling requirements are a big deal. They're really looking into that. And, I would argue that those of us that are in cannabis only businesses are probably more well-versed on compliance and what is and what isn't compliant.
Yeah.
But not that, I guess that's not 100% true. There's some people that are just kind of running a store or whatever. And, it's like they figure that anything that a distributor brings them or is willing to sell them is compliant. And, I think we all understand that that's not 100% true.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. And especially if you're
most of those guys aren't from here.
Correct.
So they'll hire a couple sales guys. They're based in Colorado or California, and then it's like, okay, you guys go drop this stuff off.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, a lot of the, I guess I'll just refer to them as national brands in the hemp derived Lodo space. They're attempting to field products that, in theory or in their interpretation, are federally legal. But Minnesota, one thing that we've done legislatively in Minnesota is we've really drilled down on that total post decarb concentration. And so, I've seen lots of, like carts are notorious for, this is Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, HHC, THCP, CHCV, and it's all one conglomeration, right? But every one of them is theoretically under a certain limit. So, but collectively, they're far surpassed the limit. And, vape right now, and that's another thing I have no comprehension on, is why inhalable products are completely off the board right now. Like even CBD only carts. I don't understand the logic behind it, but I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere that made that call for the state or the state department.
It's interesting that you mentioned that one, because we did an event the other night with the Office of Medical Cannabis talking through what that inspection process looks like. And Margaret, who came to do the presentation, who runs that inspection division, even made a comment about how we don't exactly know why all non-intoxicating cannabinoids are banned in smokable form, but they are. And so this is sort of what we're enforcing for now, but it's just a temporary rule. So I guess don't sell them, but keep them in back. No, don't do that.
Yeah, don't hide things in your back room.
No,
folks.
no, definitely don't do that.
Go back there.
Yeah. Well, so a question for you. I think we've talked to a lot of different people that have perspectives on this issue. We've seen some people that have been in the industry for a number of years that have said, hey, enforcement has been a bad thing generally for me. And I really don't want to see a ton of enforcement waving in this industry. And then we see, I think, what is the way opposite end of the spectrum, which is cannabis shop owners literally calling up the Department of Health or filling out their form online to say, this shop and this shop and this shop and this shop are selling illegal products and you should do something about it. Obviously, there's a lot of nuances to it. But if you were to sort of put yourself somewhere on that spectrum of enforcement is good because it protects good operators to enforcement is bad because cannabis enforcement is bad, where sort of do you fall generally?
I'm dead in the middle.
All right, there we go.
So, Both of those statements are true.
Okay.
So one, I look at that as low key snitching, and I don't do that. I don't agree with that. Snitches are a dying breed. On the other hand, as a a company that has really spent a lot of time trying to remain compliant in a wildly fast-paced, changing compliance environment, it sucks when your customers are like, "Hey, the place down the road sells this. Why don't you?" And so in my mind, that I'm like, "Oh, I'm losing money because I'm not doing the wrong things right now." And, I think historically we can look at a state like California where compliance was their biggest Achilles heel when they did their legalization. So, John goes in, files for a business license, gets a cannabis license, is paying sales taxes, is doing all of the right things, is maintaining compliance, passes every inspection with flying colors. And then Jerry, the bad actor, comes in, pops up a pot shop right across the street from him, knowing full well I have 6 to 9 months before they burn me on it. I'm not paying taxes. I'm not doing appropriate testing on my products. I'm just making tons of cash, hand over fist, and not giving bleeding the guy across the street because now I'm selling my products cheaper than his. And then in 6 to 9 months, when I get caught, I move 3 blocks down the road and set one up right across the street from Tanner, who's doing all the right things, and then burn him down for 6 to 9 months. And that, that was a years-long endeavor in California specifically. And so as much as I really would just not want to have the government in my life in any real capacity whatsoever, let me live my life, I understand that apparatus should be in place, should be functional, and should give everybody a fairly even playing ground. And then let's see who the best formulator is. Let's see who the best grower is. Let's see who the best products are out there, and maybe it's just marketing and you're selling the same stuff as 3 guys in town, but your packaging's way cooler and you're selling it for $2 cheaper. Maybe, I don't know. But let that market work itself out. But it has to be on the same playing field.
You have to build it first.
Correct.
Yeah, one comment that Margaret made during her presentation that I thought was really interesting is she says, when they've been going through and doing inspections, the Minnesota brands, generally speaking, are pretty quick to update their products to make sure it's compliant. They're wanting to participate in this industry. It's the national brands that come in, sell their products, realize, hey, this product isn't compliant in this state, and say, well, we'll just go somewhere else.
Right. And we've had that happen, where we carried a product and it was compliant for a time, and then the state makes a change and we go back to this company and we're like, hey, this is non-compliant in Minnesota. Can you make a Minnesota compliant version? And, when you're the only state and maybe one of just a handful of their customers in Minnesota, it's much easier for them just to say, we're just going to focus on other states then. Because Minnesota's doing weird stuff that's not necessarily the same as the rest of the country,
Sell in Wisconsin. I've seen a lot of businesses just pick up more in Wisconsin.
Manufacturers in Minnesota that were making at the time compliant products may have 10 pallets of a certain type of gummy that was compliant, right before 151.72, and now you're sitting on 10 pallets of gummies or whatever that may be, an end product, a finished product in a package that you can't move. Well, are you just going to eat that? No, nobody in their right mind in the game is going to just take an L on that. They're going to send that to a state where they can move it. Miraculously, there are several companies here in Minnesota that also have Wisconsin locations, right?
Absolutely.
I don't hate the player.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, Jerry, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate being able to chat with you, being able to talk a little bit about your business, talk a little bit about what that inspection process was like going through your town, and then also just to chat with you generally about the news. You're sort of our first guest that we've had co-host with us. So
fun having
you
co-host.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fresh perspective.
Yes.
Calm down in the back.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with this guy.
I imagine you do.
Yeah,
And it's been cool. So, I've met John several times over at Uniflora Holistics. I met you there.
Yeah, for sure.
Twice. Obviously, I've met Steven.
Yeah, we chatted as we should get you on the show sometime, and here we are.
Yeah.
So really excited to have you
were
out.
Doing an
finally.
education session that day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a fun day. Oh, all right. Well, I think that's all we have for today.
So I have to take a moment for the Southern Minnesota companies because so outside of the Twin Cities sphere, sometimes we get slept on. So like Lulu Magoo from Fifth Sun Gardens is such a rad dude. Is such a cool grower, outdoor grower. I think he was one of the first hemp licenses for like high CBD production in the state. Lance from Southern Soda Growers is one of the most genius living soil growers out there. Cornell Urban Ag is another living soil guru. Doc Dabbs, Mason, Jeff and Tom from Superior Cannabis are killing it, and you just had him on
For sure,
from Superior Cannabis. And then like I get some heat sometimes because of all the different people I work with. Like I'm working with cool people, and I don't care what your opinion of them is.
I love that though.
That doesn't always line up well with some people, but other companies that are in southern, like Crested River is another one that's like murdering the beverage game right now, in my opinion. I think it's some of the best sodas out there. But I mean, there's so many talented growers, business people, and cannabis operations that are ready to go in Minnesota. I think all of those guys should 100% have a chance to, make it happen. And for me, normalization of cannabis is the big dream. Like everybody has an opportunity now to buy safe, legal products, and you don't have to buy from a guy behind a 7-Eleven dumpster, safe, tested. Let's do it. Minnesota's ready.
I love that. I want a shirt now that says legalization is the big dream with the big dream
There
logo
you go.
on it.
I'll make you one.
Perfect. All right. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome.
For everyone listening or watching at home, you can catch us again in your feeds in just about a week. We got another episode coming out. Really excited for the one next week because we're going to be talking a lot about Canna Connect, talking a lot about some upcoming events. We got some pretty cool interviews, so be sure to listen all the way through for that.
That's another. You want to talk about people like Minnesota Cannabis College, Canna Connect.
Got it, Steve.
Yeah. Like you guys are elevating the industry far more than any legislator in St. Paul right now. You guys are doing such a phenomenal service to the community, and thanks to Dabbler Depot. I said it earlier. This is one of the coolest liquor stores I've ever stepped foot in, and they have a cannabis side to boot. And so, stop at Dabbler Depot
And coffee and donuts.
Absolutely,
it's a cool place.
I mean, it's one of the coolest places in the city, I think.
Well, thank you for that. And also thank you for joining us in this mission of really just trying to help educate people on some of the amazing stuff going on here in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
I'll bring it to my grave. We got one of the coolest industries in the country. We just got to keep it that way.
Yes.
All right. Well, find us on Reddit, Instagram, Facebook for now, TikTok, YouTube, all that jazz. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you again in another week.
Now, TikTok.
Thanks, guys.
It can get bad.
We'll see.
There's no way.
Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by my co-hosts John Barty and Marcus Tarkus. Production assistance from Shayna Payton and Steve Eigenman. Today's episode is presented by North Star Law Group, your trusted partner in Minnesota's burgeoning legal cannabis industry. The information provided in this podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. Information shared may not constitute the most up-to-date or legal information. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking their own legal counsel. The opinions and views expressed on this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly. Culture. So they passed that bill through. So sorry.
So for all the listeners at home, we're watching Steven struggle.
I know. I saw that earlier.
He's absolutely riding the struggle bus, trying to get in and out right now. Don't you throw your slipper.
Incredible.
That bail almost got us earlier. Yeah.
That was a 2-man job right there.
Oh, I can't even remember what. We're talking about the Senate hearing. All right. Wow, that was great.